Hello my friends, I'm Mr. Larson and I'm the IRC Tire Guy. Today we've got another technique breakdown. Now today's episode is less of an exact step-by-step process and more of a precedent of common mistakes that I see riders make, all pertaining to the double blip. Of course, the double blip is something everyone who rides technical terrain wants to learn, and rightfully so. It's simply the best technique for conquering single obstacles. Usually when I teach a private lesson, the double blip is on the top of the list when it comes to techniques riders want to learn. Well, if you're struggling with your double blip, today I've got some tips that are sure to help you, as long as you apply them. And I won't lie, that's going to be the tough part. I'll explain that more in a second, but first, we have done a few double blip technique specific breakdowns, which you can check out right here. I'll also link all the double blip content this channel has put out in the description. Every extra bit of information helps. Okay, now, the first reason you can't double blip is you aren't trying hard enough. Now, I know sometimes I come off a little bit harsh, but it's the truth. I've heard a lot of the same sentences come from the average rider when talking about trying their double blips. They usually say stuff like, I've been trying double blips forever and I can't seem to get it, or I've tried 100 times and I'm no closer. Here's the thing, I don't believe you. Usually when someone says the number 100, the truth is about 10% of that actual number. You tried about 10 times, then you went on a ride. Now, I also know how long it takes to do 100 double blips. In fact, I did 500 double blips in a day, and you can check that video out right here. While in the process of doing 500, the first 100 took me an hour and a half. Now, I was on a trials bike, and I know how to double blip pretty good. At full speed, 100 repetitions felt like forever. 500 repetitions felt like a hard enduro. My point is, try and keep track of your attempts. You'll find 25 times feels like an eternity. I say this to everyone I'm teaching, but imagine if you treated double blips, or any technique you're struggling with for that matter, like it's your job. Like practicing it would put food on your table. If you clock in at 9 and clock out at 5, I'd be willing to bet you'd be a whole lot closer to mastery than you think. Now that I got that out of the way, here are some actual mistakes that pertain to the double blip technique specifically that I think will help. A double blip is all about clutch control. I wouldn't expect someone to master the double blip if you don't have your basic clutch control perfected. Practice the drills I constantly preach about on this channel, but most importantly, learn how to efficiently lift your front tire. Now, you guys may remember this technique breakdown, but it's imperative to dial this specific front end lift 100% before even attempting a double blip. Using front and rear brakes, body position, suspension, compression, and rebound, as well as throttle and clutch control together to consistently lift the front end in succession. Before you double blip, this is exactly what you should be able to do. The goal is to make it look and sound exactly like that. If you're dialed with the first blip without an obstacle in succession, now we can start to focus on smaller obstacles. When first learning this, I recommend a safe step ledge with a backside. It doesn't make sense to attempt obstacles that you can get hung up on when first learning this technique. It's a waste of energy, and when it doesn't go right, it can be frustrating. That's the last thing we want. Again, I don't want to see anyone quit after 10 tries, then DM me talking about 100 attempts. Practicing on a mellow ledge is not only safer, but if it goes wrong, we can still make it over the obstacle. Now, in that same realm, while practicing on a mellow ledge, a common mistake I see is riders lifting the front tire way too late. The earlier you lift the front tire, the more we can prepare for that second blip. And generally, the longer we have to place the front tire in the right place. A lot of times, I'll lay down a stick or something to indicate when I want to see that front tire go into the air. Usually 2 or 3 feet before the actual obstacle obstacle. I liken this early lift of the front tire to table tennis or ping pong. The further away from the table you are, the longer you have to react to where the ball is going. Oddly, it's kind of the same thing with the double blip. The earlier we lift, the better we can place the front tire in the correct spot on the obstacle. The further separation between the first and second blip, the more time it gives us to use the second blip of the throttle to properly propel us over the obstacle. The second blip is always a struggle, and that separation helps us dial it in. Now, speaking of front tire placement and the second blip, this tip is extremely important. Often, riders ask about the second blip. They're confused on when, where, and how to apply this second burst of power. This may seem crazy, but stop focusing so much on the second blip. Before you start throwing hate at me, just listen. I always say if you can't place your front tire in the exact same place every time on any obstacle, you're thinking too far ahead. You could paint a dot on any obstacle and I'll place my front tire in that spot every single time. Your first blip and tire placement is so important. And a lot of times riders skip that immediately and start thinking about way too many specifics. It's so cliche, but you have to learn to walk before you run. And that's just it. A lot of times the simplest explanation is the right answer, but it's so simple it sounds stupid. The rule of Occam's razor can be applied to any technique you're trying to learn. Entities should not be multiplied needlessly. That's really why the first tip I gave you is the first tip. The simplest explanation is you haven't tried hard enough. I hope this episode inspires you to drive yourself mad with 500 repetitions. Repeat until you get right up to the point of cutting your own ear off, and then back it down a bit. You'll be double blipping in no time. As always, thank you for the support of the channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as follow us on Instagram at IRC Moto and my personal Instagram page at RichLarson511. And until next time, keep shredding.